I'm sitting here in my small apartment, the one with the creaky floorboards and the window that looks out over the same quiet street I've known most of my life. It's late, the kind of late where everything feels heavier, and I keep turning this whole mess over in my head. I don't know who I'm really writing this for, maybe just myself, so I can finally see it all laid out without being able to look away. I grew up in a small county where most people finish school, find someone they knew from back then, settle down, and build the kind of life everyone around them has. Houses with yards, weekend barbecues, the same routines year after year. I always told myself I wanted more than that. I wanted a relationship that felt electric, that made my heart race and my thoughts spin. Something that didn't feel safe and small. When I was 22, I met Daniel. He worked at the hardware store in town, the one everyone goes to for paint or tools or just to chat with the guys behind the counter. He was a couple years older, with this easy way about him that made you feel like things would be okay. He wasn't flashy. He didn't have big stories or wild plans. He was just steady. If I mentioned I liked a certain kind of soup when I was sick, he'd remember and bring it over without making a fuss. When I had a rough day at my waitressing job, he'd sit on the couch with me, not pushing me to talk, just being there until the weight lifted a little. Being with him felt like breathing normal air after holding my breath too long. There were no games, no wondering where he was or what he meant by something he said. He showed up when he said he would, remembered anniversaries without reminders, and never made me feel like I had to earn his attention. For a long time, that was enough. It felt peaceful, like I had found someone who could actually build something real with me. Then one weekend, I went to a gathering at a friend's place in the next town over. It was nothing fancy, just some people from different circles hanging out in a backyard with string lights and cheap beer and coolers. That's where I met Adrian. He stood out right away, not because he was loud, but because he carried himself like he was halfway somewhere else, always observing. He had this smile that felt knowing, like he could see straight through whatever front you put up. When we started talking, he didn't ask the usual questions about work or family. He asked why I still lived in the same county I grew up in, why I seemed content with someone who planned everything out weeks ahead, why comfort mattered more to me than feeling truly awake. I laughed it off that night, but his words stuck with me like a splinter. They made me look at my life differently, at the routines I had slipped into without noticing. Daniel suddenly seemed too predictable. Our evenings of quiet dinners and early nights started to feel flat instead of comforting. I found myself thinking about Adrian more than I should have, replaying the way he looked at me like I was capable of more. It started small, a message here and there, just checking in. Then longer conversations that made my stomach flip in a way Daniel's never did. Adrian had this way of making everything feel urgent and alive. He'd text late at night about ideas or places he wanted to see, pulling me into his world. I told myself it was innocent, that talking to someone new wasn't hurting anyone. But deep down, I knew the attention from him was filling a space I hadn't even realized was empty. Daniel never suspected a thing. That was the hardest part to carry. He trusted me completely, never checked my phone, never asked who I was texting when I smiled at the screen. He believed we were solid, the kind of couple that just worked without drama. I kept telling myself I needed time to sort through my feelings, but really, I was already leaning toward Adrian. The pull toward something unpredictable felt stronger than the steady life I had. After a few months of this back and forth in my head, I finally ended things with Daniel. I sat him down in our living room one evening after work. He listened without interrupting as I explained that I needed something different, that I felt like I was missing out on a bigger kind of connection. He didn't get angry or beg me to stay. He just sat there for a minute, looking at me with those calm eyes, and asked if I was sure this was what I wanted. When I said yes, he nodded once, like he was accepting something inevitable. He gathered a few of his things, told me to take care of myself, and left without slamming the door or making a scene. It was so quiet that I felt relieved at first. I convinced myself that if he had really loved me, he would have fought harder, that his easy acceptance proved I had made the right choice. Life with Adrian started like a rush I had been craving. We spent nights driving around with the windows down, talking until the sun came up, about dreams and frustrations and all the things that felt too big for everyday conversation. He made me feel seen in a raw way, like no one else had before. There were spontaneous trips to the lake or to little music spots in bigger towns. When things were good between us, it was intense and exciting, the kind of high that made ordinary days seem dull by comparison. But the downsides crept in slowly. Adrian hated when I made plans with my old friends without him. He'd get quiet if I didn't reply to his messages right away. Not yelling, but withdrawing in a way that left me anxious and chasing his approval. He'd question my choices in subtle ways, making me feel like I had to explain every little thing or risk him pulling away. He said it came from caring so deeply that what we had was special and needed protecting. I started canceling plans, checking my phone constantly, and shrinking my world to fit around his moods. The unpredictability that once thrilled me began to wear me down, leaving me exhausted and second-guessing myself all the time. Still, I stayed. I had given up Daniel for this, and admitting it was a mistake felt too heavy. I told myself the intensity meant passion, that stable love was just code for boring. Months turned into over a year of this cycle, highs that lifted me up, followed by lows that left me feeling small and uncertain. I started missing the quiet evenings with Daniel, the way he remembered exactly how I took my tea, or how he never made me feel like I had to perform to keep his interest. But I pushed those thoughts away, convincing myself I didn't want that kind of safe life anymore. Through mutual friends, I heard scraps about Daniel. He had moved to a town about an hour away for a better job at a bigger store, something with more responsibility. People said he seemed different, more outgoing, spending time with a new group that did hiking trips and weekend projects. He wasn't sitting around waiting for me. That stung more than I expected. Part of me had assumed he'd still be there if things fell apart with Adrian. The end with Adrian came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. We had another one of those circular talks where he twisted my words until I felt like the problem for wanting basic reassurance. I sat alone in my apartment afterward, staring at the wall, and realized I no longer recognized the person I had become, someone who walked on eggshells and gave up pieces of herself to keep the peace. I packed a bag and left without a big confrontation. He didn't chase after me or try to win me back. He just shrugged and said, "If that's what I wanted, then fine." It felt like another quiet ending, but this time I knew I had to go. The weeks after were harder than I thought they would be. Everything felt flat and lonely. My apartment echoed in a way it never had before. In the quiet moments, my mind kept drifting back to Daniel, not in some dramatic, movie-like way, but in small, everyday memories. The way he'd bring my favorite snacks without being asked, how safe I felt just sitting next to him. I missed that steadiness more than I could admit. It took me almost a month to gather the nerve to reach out. I sent a short message one afternoon, just saying I hoped he was doing okay. I figured he might ignore it, or reply politely and move on. But he answered within a few hours. Our first exchanges were careful, like two people testing thin ice. He didn't press for details about what happened with Adrian, or why I was writing now. We talked about neutral things, my job, the weather changing, little updates on people we both knew. Eventually, I asked if he would be open to meeting for coffee sometime. He agreed. When I saw him walk into the small cafe near my place, my stomach did a nervous flip. He looked mostly the same. Same kind face, same relaxed posture. But there was something new in the way he carried himself. A quiet confidence, like he had settled into his own life without me. We sat and talked for a couple of hours, about ordinary stuff at first. His new job, my attempts at saving for a better car, how the county fair had been that year. Then I took a deep breath and told him the truth, or at least as much as I could without falling apart. I admitted I had made a mistake, that I hadn't appreciated what we had, and that I missed him in ways I couldn't explain properly. He listened without interrupting, his expression soft but hard to read. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he said he had missed me too, in his own way. Hearing that felt like a door cracking open. We started seeing each other again, slowly at first. Short walks, lunches, evenings where we just drove around like old times. It built from there into something that looked a lot like our old relationship, but with more care on both sides, or so I thought. On the outside, it seemed even better than before. Daniel was attentive in ways that felt thoughtful and consistent. He remembered details from conversations we had months ago, showed up with things I needed before I asked, and never once raised his voice or made me feel questioned. He was patient when I had bad days, supportive when work stressed me out. Friends commented on how lucky we were to have found our way back. I smiled and nodded, wanting so badly to believe it was real. But after a few months, a nagging feeling started in the back of my mind. Nothing obvious at first, just a sense that something was slightly off, like the warmth I remembered had been dialed back a notch. He never argued, never got jealous, never pushed for more than I offered. It was perfect on paper, but it felt managed, like every gesture was calculated to be exactly enough, but not overflowing the way it used to. Little things began to stand out. He would casually mention a trip I had taken with Adrian to a festival I had only told a couple of close friends about, or he'd reference a fight Adrian and I had that I never shared with him. Not in an accusatory way, just dropped into conversation like it was common knowledge. At first, I brushed it off as coincidence or something my friends had passed along. But the details kept adding up. Places I had been, people I had seen, even moods I had been in during that time apart. Things no one should have known unless they were paying very close attention. One evening, after we had cooked dinner together and were sitting on the couch, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked him straight out how he knew so much about that period in my life. He didn't look surprised or defensive. He set his glass down calmly and told me he knew pretty much everything. Not in a cold way, but matter of fact, like he was explaining the weather. He said he had kept tabs through mutual connections, through casual questions to people who still saw me around, even through some online checking when he felt the need. While I was caught up in the chaos with Adrian, thinking Daniel had moved on with his life, he had been quietly gathering pieces of my story from a distance. He hadn't interfered or tried to pull me back. He just watched and waited. My heart sank as he explained it. He said he needed to understand why I had chosen that path, to see for himself what I thought was better than what we had. Most of all, he needed to know if I would find my way back without any pressure from him. And I had. That part should have felt validating, like proof that we were meant to try again. But the way he said it, with that steady gaze and no trace of the old softness, made my stomach twist. After that night, nothing exploded. There were no fights, no ultimatums. Daniel continued being kind, reliable, and present in all the right ways. He still brought me tea the way I liked it, still planned quiet weekends that felt comfortable. But I could feel the shift clearly now. The love I got back wasn't the open, unguarded kind from before. It was measured, protected. He had built careful boundaries around his heart, giving me exactly the stability I had once complained was too boring, but holding back the deeper trust and affection I had taken for granted. I tried to bridge the gap. I put in extra effort, planning little surprises for him, opening up more about my feelings, showing through actions that I had learned my lesson. I avoided anything that might seem risky or unpredictable. But you can't force someone to forget how you once walked away so easily. You can't make them look at you the same after they've seen you choose chaos over them. Daniel never threw my past in my face or used it as a weapon. He simply gave me what I had asked for the first time, a calm, consistent life without the full emotional risk. We're still together now, sharing routines that look good to everyone else. People in town comment on how nice it is that we work things out, how some couples are just meant to circle back. I nod and smile because arguing would mean explaining everything, and I don't have the words for that. From the outside, our life together is steady and enviable. We go to work, come home, spend evenings in comfortable silence or watching shows we both like. It will probably last a long time because Daniel is the kind of person who commits once he decides something. But at night, when the lights are off and the room is quiet, I lie there thinking about the difference. The old Daniel looked at me with an openness that made me feel chosen every day. This version is careful, like he's decided exactly how much of himself is safe to give. I traded real, deep love for something flashy and intense. And when I came crawling back, I didn't earn back the same version. I got the careful one, the protected one. I know now that you can lose someone without them ever fully leaving your life. You can wake up next to them, share meals, build days together, and still feel the quiet ache of knowing you're no longer the person they would have picked first if they had the choice again. The revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It was subtle, wrapped in kindness and consistency, the very things I once dismissed. Daniel didn't have to raise his voice or plot anything dramatic. He simply became what I said I wanted, but on his terms now, steady, reliable, and forever a little out of reach in the ways that matter most. Sometimes I wonder if he's truly happy or if he's just honoring a decision he made long ago. I wonder if, in his quiet way, this is his version of moving on while staying put. I don't ask because I'm afraid of the answer. Instead, I keep showing up, hoping that time might soften the edges, even though deep down, I suspect some choices change things forever. The love triangle that once felt like my big escape turned into the lesson I never saw coming. I chose the spark over the steady flame, and in the end, the flame learned to burn lower so it wouldn't get extinguished again.